Good evening. It is election season in Saskatchewan, and just moments ago, the 2024 provincial election leaders debate wrapped up at the Saskatchewan legislature. Was there a winner? How did it go for the leaders of the two most popular parties in our province? Stay with us as we break down the debate and look ahead to election night on October 28th. Hi there, I'm Sam McKagan. Thanks for joining us here for this special edition of CBC Saskatchewan News. We'll hear from both Scott Moe and Carla Beck shortly in their post-debate scrums, but before that, we have a panel of experts to help us analyze how the evening went. First up, we have two former MLAs joining us in the Regina studio. Ken Krawetz was first elected in Kanorapelli in 1995 as a Liberal member of the Legislative Assembly. He was a founding member of the Saskatchewan Party in 1997, became Deputy Premier in 2007, and was the Finance Minister in 2010, retiring from politics in 2016. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Oh, great to be here.
And Yens Pedersen was elected in Regina Northeast by-election in 2018. He held the riding for 2 years. He did mount other campaigns in Regina South in 2007 and 2011. He's a former candidate for the leadership of the Saskatchewan NDP to succeed Lauren Calvert. And before that, the president of the Saskatchewan New Democratic Party. He's also currently a lawyer in Regina. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'm hoping you will both give it to me straight tonight. We know you align along party lines, so let's get to it. Let's talk highs and lows. Jens, let's start with you. If you had to give me the strongest moment and the weakest moment of the night, what would they be?
Well, I guess for me, it wasn't a moment that was the strongest, but what I really liked to see was that both leaders were very civil. They actually got a chance to get into the issues. I think the debate format was better for that. I think Scott, I've seen him debate a number of times in the legislature. He can come across, when he gets spirited, as very bellicose and loud. And I think that he was coached not to do that. That wouldn't be a good look opposite Carla. But I think it reflects well on him when he is calmer and in his debate. I think Carla, by nature, is a very thoughtful. I've never heard a kind of a rash statement ever come out of Carla's mouth. I've known her for a long time, and it gave her an opportunity to have that come across. So I think the people of Saskatchewan benefited from all of that.
Do you think it was a strong debate?
I do think it was. I often don't watch political debates because I became so turned off by the shouting over each other, the talking over each other, and there wasn't a great deal of that. And so I actually really enjoyed it.
Okay. On the other side of the table, Ken Krawetz, high points, low points for you tonight.
Well, I was surprised. I was surprised at the description of a province that I heard from the two leaders. From Scott, again, a leader that's been there for a while, I heard a description of a province that is strong, that is growing, that has an economy that leads the nation. Population growth now, we've just hit 1.25 million people in the province. And all of those things bring challenges. So we have a province that's growing. From Carla, I was a bit surprised. I heard doom and gloom. The province is bad. There are so many things wrong with the province. And to me, that's a bit of a contrast, because if there were so many things wrong with the province, why would you have 250,000 more people coming? It's great to have population growth because we can see now the enrollment growth in our schools. Does that bring challenge? And Carla pointed those things out. Absolutely. We need to address overcrowding in schools. But you know what? Most of the overcrowding is in urban centers. I was in a school in my town yesterday, and they're happy, so happy, that they have 7 additional students that have arrived this year versus June 30th of last year. There is no additional expense. They're just happy that they've grown. So I think I saw 2 different points of view of this province.
I'm actually sorry if I can jump in
go
there.
On.
I'm really happy Ken touched on that because, I think one of the real challenges for our province is how to deal with that growth. And one of the things that I saw reflected over and over again in the Sask Party platform was, in the current platform, was trying to take credit for a lot of work that happened under Brad Wall and under Lauren Calvert, but not in the last 4 years, when Scott Moe has been when he's been the leader. And there are tremendous challenges presented by growth, and a lot of that growth has been in the urban areas. And so we saw that most recently here, just was it 6 months ago, with teacher job action. And you know, the SDF has been very challenged, or they've had this, you know, rural-urban division historically, but this last, 6 months ago, they came united and they said, this is too much, this is not good, and there's issues, that the teachers are facing in their workplace, that schools are, dealing with in their place of learning. Mm-hmm. And that's, they really highlighted how that is not being addressed enough.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, though, Ken, you talked about small communities and how they're happy to grow. Mm-hmm. But in urban centers, some of those classrooms are bursting at the seams. Yeah, absolutely. And they are, I don't want to say panicking, but they're like, where do we put all of these new students? Where's the balance?
Well, the balance is at the school division board level, and I've been there. I was on a school board for 9 years, and you make decisions as to where their students are going to be allocated. Mm-hmm. It's the attendance area. We see in urban centers, especially here in Regina, with the building of brand new schools in parts of Regina, you see an automatic influx of people wanting to live there, and number one, even if they don't live there, they want their students to go to a brand new school. There's nothing wrong with the other schools that exist. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a bit of a blend that's needed. You need a strong school board that says we're going to push for more buildings, infrastructure, and that's why I said, when I was finance minister, we pushed for more infrastructure. We wanted to build more schools all across the province, and you see that. You see that in the platform for those who want to look at it.
But who teaches in those? Like, we can build the schools, but who's gonna teach in the classrooms?
Well, right now, we have a growing number of teachers. It was a very difficult decision prior to 2007, or even prior to 1995, when a school board had to make a decision to close a school, mm-hmm. to ensure that indeed that there was program. Back then, education was funded directly from a government grant. And I recall 3 successive years of negative grants transfers, -4%, -2%. And what that meant was school boards had to move to the other source of funding, which is property tax. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't exist anymore. Property taxpayers or property owners still pay tax, but it's directly to the government, and it's completely kept by the government and then transferred out to school division. $2.2 billion has been allocated to the school divisions this year. Is it sufficient? You'll hear from the SDF, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. We need more. Education will always want to grow. Mm-hmm. And there are students that bring much more complex needs than there was when I was in the classroom mm-hmm. many years ago, okay? Mm-hmm. So, we need to meet those challenges by hiring more people, by ensuring that there are the dollars that the boards of education need.
Okay, I will come back to these two in just a moment, but I want to introduce you to our political analyst. Joining us from CBC Saskatoon studios is University of Saskatchewan political studies professor Daniel Westlake. Daniel, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I want to get your thoughts on how you think Scott Moe and Carla Beck performed. What were you really watching for, and is there a particular moment that really stood out to you?
So I think the debate was much of what I expected. In this kind of situation where you've got a government that's been in power for quite some time and a number of issues that have emerged, be that healthcare, be that cost of living, that allow the opposition a way to attack, I'm not surprised to see that Scott Moe and Carla Beck really were clashing over the Saskatchewan Party's record. On one hand, it's inescapable for the Sask Party. They have to try to defend it. And on the other hand, it's an easy target for the NDP to try to go after things like healthcare performance, go after cost of living. I'm not sure where that leaves us. I suspect it leaves us where we were before the debate, where you clarify that the NDP is really going after the Sask Party, is trying to go after the record, and the Sask Party is put in a position where they have to defend it. Probably means more votes for the NDP, but I'm not sure it's enough to make Carla Beck premier or to give them a real shot at government. So I'm not sure I'm seeing a lot that changed coming out of the debate. I think a lot of the themes were what I expected going in.
I wanted to ask you about, there's a moment that stood out to me, and it involved maybe confusing who knows what's responsible for which levels of government, and involves connecting Carla Beck's NDP to the federal NDP. If maybe, let's take a look at that first, and then we can talk about it.
Small businesses most certainly need support, of which both parties have put forward, and they need less taxes and less regulation, primarily, that is coming from a federal government of which the NDP supported and have propped up for the last number of years. The NDP, very recently, Jagmeet Singh said, we're not going to support Justin Trudeau anymore. That lasted 2 weeks, of which at that time he had an opportunity to go into the House of Commons and to not support Justin Trudeau, to not support a carbon tax, which would save small businesses across Canada. We're in a provincial debate right now. So very much, but he chose not to. He supported Justin Trudeau again, and he supported the carbon tax, and he's costing Canadians, including those that live in Saskatchewan, money.
Daniel, one of the things that's interesting for me about this is through this election campaign, it's been 2 weeks, but I find just in conversations with people as we are, oh, hold on, we'll come back to this. Premier Moe is speaking to reporters, so we'll go to that first and then we'll come back.
That the respective parties have to Saskatchewan people. And that is the goal of the debate, and I think that if that can happen, they are the winners. If they can better understand the platforms that are put forward by the respective parties, in this case 2 parties that the polling says can form government. So I would say if there is a winner tonight, it would be Saskatchewan people, because they had a better opportunity to understand the platforms that the Saskatchewan Party and the NDP are putting forward. Certainly, largest income tax reduction since 2008. It's permanent income tax reduction relative to the NDP's platform, which is a smaller, temporary reduction in the gas tax, which does exclude people that wouldn't drive as much and would, favor large trucking companies and such. We put forward a platform that is 3/4 of it is to do with tax reductions, which is going to leave more money in the pockets of Saskatchewan people for them to spend, versus the NDP platform, which is largely uncosted spending, which is going to raise taxes and remove money from Saskatchewan families' pockets so that the NDP could spend it. And so that's a significant difference here this evening.
Do you think you're able to change anybody's mind?
That's always the goal. I guess we'll find out on October the 28th.
It seems like Carla Beck instructed you quite a lot during the debate periods, and you kind of took the avenue of just hearing her out. What was your reaction when that was happening?
I mean, not really any reaction. I mean, we're both just trying to get our platforms out there. It's not maybe it would be viewed as a head-to-head, Beck versus Moe, NDP versus Sask party. I don't view it that way. I view it as an opportunity for the 2 parties to put their platforms in front of Saskatchewan people, so that Saskatchewan people have a greater understanding of, what our vision is, not only for the next 4 years, but setting up our province for success for a decade or so into the future. And that's, that's why we have a plan for growth, is to look beyond that 4-year cycle. That's why we focus on, growing that economy in Saskatchewan, so that we can make the investments into the schools and the hospitals and the services that people expect. And so I think, and it isn't so much about the dynamics of the debate, it's about what we can put forward to Saskatchewan people.
With respect to investments, looking at the platform that you put forward over the weekend, you mentioned healthcare spending for 2024-2025, but there's no definitive increase that you're proposing to address concerns within healthcare. So I'm curious how you square that circle a little bit, because within the platform itself, there isn't a mention of additional spending to rectify some of the issues that are facing.
It's a platform, not a budget. And I would point to our most recent budget with the almost 11% increase in healthcare spending. In fact, over the last 4 years, there's been $1.8 billion increased investment into healthcare investment in our province, offering services, offering a record number of surgeries, for example, this past year, investment into our urgent care centers and staffing those facilities. So $1.8 billion over the last 4 years. You compare that to the NDP commitment of 1.1, which is uncosted, $685 million missing from that. 1.1 moving forward. It's actually a $700 million cut that they're proposing when you look at the Saskatchewan Party record. And so we also said we were going to run on our record, and that's our record, is investment into healthcare year after year.
So over the next 4 years, are you going to invest $1.8 billion more
Well, as we go over the next number of years, we're going to look at fulfilling our campaign provinces that we have put forward in this campaign as soon as we are able. So, for example, of the $1.2 billion platform that we had put forward, 3/4 of that is tax reductions, and we would be moving forward on that as quickly as we are able. As we look forward into the future, the healthcare budget, we would say very much that what you have seen in the past is what you will see in the future from this government is continued investment, not only in the people that are working in our healthcare field, but continuing to invest in different ways to deliver healthcare.
Can you just explain why, I think Ron Stiles was explaining this to us, but it's like a 0.8% increase in service spending, which wouldn't be enough to really cover additional spending to address the health.
Is he trying to explain the $200 million fictional revenue that he's pulled out of the air?
My question is, though, is just like what are we going to see service cuts if you're only going to spend 0.8% more on services, on government services? No, and that hasn't been the record of the Saskatchewan Party. In fact, I would say that the Saskatchewan Party record when it comes to the services in particular of education and healthcare, you could in some ways look at highways that way as well, although it's mostly capital infrastructure, but education and healthcare have been significant during our time in government. Education an increase of 9% last year, healthcare almost 11%. Education 55%, pardon me, over the last decade and a half, when our student population finally in this province, yes, is increasing, but has increased some 18%. And so I think when you look at what this government is going to do, or what this party would do if we form government in October the 28th, is to continue to focus on growing that economy that we have in Saskatchewan, and it has grown. Export value of $17 billion, total exports in 2007, $50 billion this year and $50 billion last year. As that grows, our wealth grows and our opportunity grows, and then it allows us to invest that 55% increase into education.
I think that people actually feel that though, when they are, you know, seeing rent increases, they're paying more at the grocery store. I mean, it's one thing to talk about the economic growth that occurs in the province, but I'd argue that not everybody sees that, and a lot of people simply don't.
Yeah, no, and that's why I fully acknowledge in the debate that today Saskatchewan is the most affordable place to live in Canada, and we have the low. Pardon me.
Do you think it feels that way?
I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm just telling you what the facts are, okay? It is the most affordable place to live in Canada. And it has the lowest inflationary rate because we removed the carbon tax from the way that we heat our homes. And so, but in saying that, and this would answer your question, I think Saskatchewan families are feeling the cost of living pressures like many other Canadian families across this nation, albeit at maybe a different rate, I don't know, but certainly Saskatchewan families are feeling the cost of living pressures that are there. So that's why you've seen us come forward with a platform that is largely focused on affordability. As I said, 3/4 of the commitment that we made in this platform is going to reduce income taxes for everyone that lives in Saskatchewan. And all told, we will have 164,000 people who won't pay provincial income tax at all should we form government on October the 28th, increasing the low-income supplement, increasing the graduate retention program by 20%. All of those things are impacting the bottom line of Saskatchewan people and Saskatchewan youth.
When it comes to admitting that people in Saskatchewan might be feeling some of that strain economically, I suppose to what extent is that you're doing? To what extent is that your party's doing? To what extent is that your party?
Well, I think there's other levels of government that are having a tremendous impact on the cost of living, and levels of government that we're seeing the NDP support and prop up time and time again. Largely, the largest contributor to inflationary pressures that we're seeing in this province and across this nation is nothing more than the carbon tax and the increased regulation coming in the federal government. And so we saw a federal NDP leader that stood up and said he was going to end this show. And for 2 weeks he did not. He said he would end it, and then at the first opportunity he did not. He went in and supported Justin Trudeau, and he supported the carbon tax, which is the largest inflationary pressure that Saskatchewan and Canadian families are facing. And so we would respectfully ask him to keep his word, and we would ask the leader of the opposition provincially to urge the federal NDP leader to keep his word. But why we have brought forward the platform that we did, that is largely focused on affordability for Saskatchewan people and Saskatchewan families, and reducing the taxes that they pay and increasing the dollars that are in their pocket so that they can choose how to spend those dollars, was because we identify and realize that the cost of living pressures, although we're the most affordable place in Canada to live today and the lowest inflationary rate, the cost of living pressures are real.
My question was, to what extent is that your responsibility?
Is our responsibility as government? It would be, I think every government would be responsible for some of the decisions, or all of the decisions ultimately that we have made over the last number of years. I would say the decisions that we have made around preserving the $2 billion in each and every budget that have allowed us to lay claim to being the most affordable place in the nation of Canada would be some responsibility of this government as well. There are things that we have done back to 2018, certainly, so that we are ensuring that the fiscal situation in Saskatchewan is solid moving forward, so that we can make those investments into healthcare and we can make those investments into education. But certainly we continue to ensure that that $2 billion is present in each and every budget year, and that's going to increase if we form government on October the 28th. That is creating an environment in our province where we remain the most affordable place in Canada to live.
You brought up the federal government during the debate and then just brought it up again now. I guess, why bring up the federal government in a debate about the future of Saskatchewan, who should be the province in the next few years?
Because the NDP are propping up the federal government today that is creating some of the largest inflationary increases on Saskatchewan people and Canadian families.
Do you think it's a winning message to bring that up, bring up the federal government in a provincial debate?
Well, we'll see the outcome of the federal election when it should call, but who holds the opportunity to have that election begin are the NDP. And we would ask them respectfully, and the leader of the NDP to keep his word, and the provincial leader to ask the federal leader to keep his word, and end the supply confidence agreement that he has. And let's have a federal election. Let's have a carbon tax election in this nation. We have been adamantly against the carbon tax since the day it was introduced, before it was cool. Unlike the folks, the opposition here in Saskatchewan that supported it, voted to support it in our legislative assembly, and have supported it up until recently when they found some newfound knowledge that it actually is costing Saskatchewan families money. We've said that all along.
Why do you think it's relevant to bring up what the NDP did nearly 2 decades ago?
It is relevant. That's the record. That's their most recent record that they have. And that record is not a good one. It's one of increasing taxes, 9% PSD. It's one of closing schools, 1 school a month, 176 schools closed in our province, 52 hospitals. That is their record. Unfortunately, that is what this is the most recent record that they have. And, we bring it up because we believe that that record of decline, loss, and closure is also their plan. When you bring forward a $3 billion hole in the platform that you had brought forward, you have no choice but to raise taxes. You have no choice but to increase the costs on Saskatchewan families if you are going to balance and do what you say you did.
So you bring up the record from 2 decades ago. You say you're running on your record. However, the NDP has also said in the past that your record in past elections is that you make all of these election promises, and then once you're elected in, come the next budget, those promises just cease to exist. What's your response?
Well, we kept them all. Last time we had said we would reduce power bills by 10%. We did that. But last time we said we would focus on balancing the budget, and we did. The last 2 years have been balanced budgets by the auditor's words, not by the NDP's or anyone else. What you will see in the plan that the NDP put forward is it will result in their record. It'll result in increased taxes. It will result in having to make difficult decisions around the services that are being offered because it's uncosted. There's $3 billion missing in their plan. There's $1.2 billion missing in education, $685 million missing in their healthcare plan, and $800 million on the revenue side that they have just simply pulled out of thin air. There's a U of S economist on the news each night that cannot explain where that $800 million in revenue is coming from.
Any other questions?
Thank you, everybody.
Premier Scott Moe speaking with reporters out of the debate at the Saskatchewan Legislature tonight. If you're just joining us, I'm Sam McKagan. This is a special presentation of the CBC News, a post-debate analysis. And I have with me a panel of experts, including former MLA Ken Krawetz and former MLA Yens Pedersen, and in Saskatoon, Daniel Westlake. And I want to keep on the panel here because I'm sure that Carla Beck is going to speak soon. But I'm wondering, listening to Scott Moe there speaking with reporters, Jens, I'll start with you. What did you notice? Obviously, going toe-to-toe with Carla Beck, she had things she needed to get across, but speaking with reporters, the question's a little more pointed. What did you notice there?
I guess I noticed, Scott, reusing something that's worked very well for him. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Up from Pixar, where the dog keeps being distracted every time you say squirrel, and that works for Scott. Every time he utters the word Trudeau, he distracts attention from his record. And the other thing that works very well is talking about things that were 20 plus years ago, in some cases 30 years ago. The things he talks about in the NDP record were things that were, when most of the NDP MLAs that were in the legislature were still in grade school. I mean, like that's how long ago they were. We're talking 30 plus years ago. If you look at the more recent NDP record under Lauren Calvert, well, it doesn't want to talk about that because the NDP track record under Lauren Calvert was of significant tax cuts, consistent tax cuts, balanced budgets, repayment of the provincial debt, significant economic growth, to the point where there was over $1 billion left in the kitty when Brad Wall took over. I mean, that was a very good track record, but Scott doesn't want to talk about that. He wants to talk about the earlier record when the NDP was digging out from Grant to Vine. All of that, however, is irrelevant because what we're talking about right now is Scott's record and what's going to happen for the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Ken, I see you thinking and making notes. What did you take away from what Scott Moe had to say there, and maybe I'll let you react a little to what Jens had to say.
Well, I think your record is what you run on. Absolutely. And I think when we look back at the last 17 years, if that's the record of the Saskatchewan Party, I'm part of that. I was part of that. So, when we look at the growth in this province, when we look at the fact, and Jens mentioned the debt, if you look back into the public accounts document that came out with the fiscal year March 31 of 2007, okay, just before the Saskatchewan Party became government, the government debt at that point was just over $7 billion. I had a chance to take a look at the public accounts document that just highlighted the fiscal year that ended on March 31st. The government operating debt is just over $7 billion. It has been up and down and up and down, but it's the government operating debt. All right? We used to refer to that as bad debt because that means that you are spending more than what you're receiving. Now, what has grown, and this is what we hear on the doorsteps from candidates, is the rest of the debt, the Crown Corporation debt, the business enterprise debt, the Municipal Financing Corporation of the province. Actually, municipalities take advantage of borrowing money from the province that they use to build their own projects, water reservoirs, etc. That has grown. That has grown from the time of 2007. It has grown by about $8 billion because Sask Power, SaskTel, Sask Energy, they're all building things that are expensive. What has also grown is a capital debt. And the capital debt is, I think, is what Scott was trying to point out. We have, the Sask Party has built hospitals and nursing homes and schools, all requiring money to be borrowed. When I was finance minister, one of my last years, we borrowed money for 30 years, locked in at 2.8%. I don't think I'm giving away a political secret here, but it was locked in for 2.8% over 30 years. Everybody knows that if you're going to build your house, you're not going to wait until you save up every nickel and dime to build the house. You're now going to have debt. So now I hear from people saying, oh, the Scott Moe and the Sask Party has $31 billion worth of debt. Absolutely true. The government debt, the operating debt, is still just over $7 billion. Has not grown. So I can see why Scott is a little annoyed with the fact that we're looking back at how Saskatchewan has changed. But the fact is, we're controlled by what the feds do as well. And the carbon tax is a good example. I can spend some time on the carbon tax too when I talk about our little Invermay arena. We pay over $1,000 worth of carbon tax in a year. You know how many dollars we get back in rebate? None. Carbon tax took away $1,000. We received $2,500 community rink affordability grant that now, if you look at the platform, you'll see that's going to be increased from $2,500 to $5,000. Terrific. But we don't want to give it away in carbon tax because we can't get a nickel of it back.
Okay. I hear in my fancy little earpiece, Oh, not yet. Okay, we're not going to Carla Beck just yet, but she is getting ready to speak. I don't want to set us off down some roadway where we're going to be talking about something for a while and I have to cut you off. But we do hear a lot of talk about the federal government and a lot of, whether you call it distraction in your case or legitimate when it comes to the carbon tax, but at a time where there could be a federal election, we have provincial elections going on October 28th, and then we have municipal elections coming November 13th. In conversations, I was saying this to Daniel before Mr. Moe was speaking, there's a lot of confusion of who is responsible for what. And when you have all three levels of government going around the same time, potentially in an election, it can muddy the waters and cause that kind of confusion. Ken, I'm wondering, is it a provincial issue to talk about the federal government during a provincial election?
Absolutely. We have to discuss not only, I mean, I know it's a confusing time for people to determine who's running municipally, who's running provincially, who's running, or who might be.
Oh, and now Beck is Miss Beck
All right.
speaking.
No problem.
Let's listen to Carla Beck.
Excited to come out tonight and to talk about our plan, to talk about our platform, and to talk about the things where the places in this province that I think people in this province deserve better. Cost of living, healthcare, education, crime. You know, I think there's always probably one or two that we're going to think about. It will keep you up at night and we, you know, come up with a different answer. But all in all, I was proud to present our plan, and Saskatchewan people will have the choice.
Do you feel that you did an effective job in delivering your message and your promises?
Yes, you know, there were a number of things that we wanted to make clear. The investments in healthcare, in education, the fact that we know that Saskatchewan people need relief, and they need relief now, not at some time in the future. And I know that there's a lot of frustrations with the way things are going in this province right now. I think I had the opportunity to point that out and show our plan to improve on those things. All in all, it was a good debate. It went quickly. And I was very happy to have the opportunity for Saskatchewan people to see the debate.
I'm kind of curious as to why you're trying to frame the question of voting right now.
Because at the end of the day, the job that both Mr. Moe and I are running for is to be the Premier of this province. And that means that, you know, some things are more important than crass politics. Actually delivering on healthcare, actually delivering relief, actually ensuring that kids in the province get the education that they deserve. It's also something I hear from a lot of people in the province right now. You know, look, I've been Team Green for a long time, or I voted for the Sask party for the last 20 years, but this time I'm changing my vote. People are looking for change. They need to know that they are invited in, that they can vote for that change. And this is about delivering for the people of Saskatchewan, no matter who they vote for, no matter where they live in the province. Well, that will, I mean, there were a few folks on Twitter who, you know, who said so, a couple of messages in, but again, you know, people in this province are really practical. People pay attention to politics. People will have the opportunity to decide. I know that the platform that we've put forward, the things that we were talking about tonight, that we've been talking about for the last month and a half, are the things that Saskatchewan people care most about. The things that people in this province want to see from their government. And I know that there are a lot of people that are frustrated and looking for change. So, you know, I think we accomplished that tonight.
It was fairly simple, but quite a less over talk we've seen in previous debates. Was that a choice on your part?
Well, I do know that people watch the debate because they want to hear what the leaders have to say. I think that I'm glad to hear that people felt it was relatively civil. I don't think that there's anything to be gained from being hyper-divisive or just simply slinging mud at each other. I'm proud of our plan. I'm proud of the plan that we've put forward. And I wanted people to have the opportunity to hear that plan. I wanted people to understand the contrast between what Scott Moe and the Sask party are offering and what we're offering in this election.
Some of your platform, your budgeting, just how can Saskatchewan people trust that it's not going to lead to bigger deficits than you say, and that it won't lead to tax increases as well?
Yeah. A couple of things. The first one is we released our costing far ahead of any costing we've seen in recent memory, certainly in my memory in this province. We laid it out for people to be able to see what our plan was, our plan to get back to balance in 4 years, but also critically to invest in the things that right now are, like healthcare, on verge of collapse if we don't make those investments. Our record, our platform, as I said, again, is fully costed. We haven't hidden it, as I've said before, and I say again, we expect it to be scrutinized. Many people had the opportunity to go through the budget with Ron Stiles, someone who served as DM Finance in this province for 5 years, someone who is a very well-respected economist here in the province who served the people of this province for 40 years, all stripes, all political stripes. And I don't make promises that I can't keep. I know that Mr. Stiles doesn't put his name to something that he doesn't believe, something that he doesn't know to be true. I also would point to records in this province. When you look at, let's look at debt. Mr. Moe wanted to talk about that tonight. When you look at who has increased debt in this province, 95% of the debt in this province has occurred under Conservative governments. The Saskatchewan NDP has a record of balancing budgets in this province. 18 consecutive balanced budgets, as opposed to what we've seen until recently from this government, which is a string of 8 deficit budgets. Mr. Moe himself has the distinction of being the premier in this province who has added the most debt to Saskatchewan people. Again, Mr. Moe wants to run on his record. These are the records.
Mr. Moe brought up a few different times referencing things that happened 20 years ago prior to the NDP. Wondering if I can get your thoughts on that being brought up and how you respond to those things. Well, I respond directly to the people of Saskatchewan. I think of the people who have brought their stories to us, people who can't get health care in this province, people whose kids have only known cuts to the classroom, kids in grade 12 today. Beyond those tired old talking points is the reality that we face in this province right now. Kids not getting what they need in our classrooms, a healthcare system that's on the verge of collapse, Saskatchewan people reporting the highest level of anxiety about paying their bills at the end of the month, double the national rate when it comes to violent crime. People want us to focus on today. You can't get to where you need to go looking in the rearview mirror. We're focused on the future. We're focused on making those investments that are needed. And again, as I said, this is a plan that has been built with the people of Saskatchewan, focusing on the things that they need us to focus on. Children who are voting, or 18-year-olds who are voting in this election this fall. They've only known a Sask party government to talk about things that happened when they're concerned about, job prospects, when they're concerned about staying in the province. It doesn't mean much to them. And I think for a lot of other people, they're tired of that line. I know I am. I know Mr. Moe's had former members of his caucus say the same thing. During the debate, Scott Moe brought up the federal government, the federal NDP and the Liberal government He did it again during scrums. Just wondering on your thoughts on him referring to that, the federal politics during the debate. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. We have Scott Moe, who claims that he wants to run on his record, but we've seen him do everything but, point to other levels of government, lie about our record, lie about our platform, our costing, choose to divide and distract rather than accept the fact that he has taken us to last place when it comes to the cost of living, when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare. I don't think that's leadership. I've been very clear how I would approach any federal leader. There may be a change in leadership at the federal level. I think you have to be clear, if you're running to be the premier of this province, who you work for, in whose interests. And that your approach to any of the federal leaders needs to be the same. Again, if there are things that are on the table at the federal level, let's look at childcare, for example, I'm going to make sure that I'm at that table getting the best deal for Saskatchewan people. Holding both the federal government, but also here in the province to account for actually delivering on those $10 a day spots. And if there are areas or policy choices that negatively impact people in this province, as I said, you bet, I'll be at that table and any prime minister will have a fight from me. But this isn't about rhetoric, this is about actually delivering. And time again, we see Scott Moe with rhetoric, divisive lines, but precious little to show for it when it comes to actually delivering those results. As I said, people in this province are really practical. They want to see results. That's what we're offering.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, there goes the voice.
And that is NDP leader Carla Beck wrapping up her scrum with reporters after the leaders' debate in Regina at the Saskatchewan legislature. Beautiful setting. I want to take us back to Saskatoon, where our University of Saskatchewan Political Studies professor Daniel Westlake has been so patiently waiting to get back into the conversation tonight. My apologies. We did not expect things to move as quickly as they have. I'm wondering, Daniel, I'd love to know what you thought of the scrums with Scott Moe and Carla Beck before we get started, just because, as I was saying to the gentleman on the panel here, it's one thing to debate, but the questions from reporters are typically a little more pointed. So what stood out to you?
I mean, it's telling that both talked about the debate as an opportunity to get their platforms out. I think through both the debate and the scrums, we heard a lot of the talking points that we've been hearing over the course of the election. And I think that's telling that I think both parties feel relatively comfortable with the messages that they're getting out, and probably on the NDP side, reasonably comfortable that they've done enough to attack the Sask party record to pull some voters over. But I still think the Sask party probably is feeling comfortable enough that they've held on to enough of their rural base and perhaps enough of their suburban base, or at least these messages do enough to do that, that they can feel reasonably comfortable with the messages that they've gotten across. So it's telling to me that neither party leader feels like they need to do more, push more than kind of push the policy messages they've really been pushing through the last couple of weeks.
We have heard a lot about the federal government tonight in a provincial election. Earlier, before Mr. Moe got to speaking, we were talking a little bit about confusion between different levels of government, potential given that municipal, provincial, and potentially a federal election could all be happening within a couple weeks or months of each other. And there was an exchange between Carla Beck and Scott Moe about Jagmeet Singh. Let's listen to that.
Small businesses, most certainly. Need support, of which both parties have put forward, and they need less taxes and less regulation, primarily, that is coming from a federal government of which the NDP supported and have propped up for the last number of years. The NDP, very recently, Jagmeet Singh said, we're not going to support Justin Trudeau anymore. That lasted 2 weeks, of which at that time he had an opportunity to go into the House of Commons and to not support Justin Trudeau, to not support a carbon tax, which would save small businesses across Canada
right now.
so very much, but he chose not to. He supported Justin Trudeau again, and he supported the carbon tax, and he's costing Canadians,
their kids aren't
including
getting
those
the
that live in
supports they
Saskatchewan,
need.
money.
We heard a lot about home heating tonight, the carbon tax, and then that connection that Mr. Moe tried to make with Carla Beck to the federal NDP. Is this an effective move for him?
So I think it's pretty common for us to see, particularly Western Canadian premiers, try to tie provincial parties to federal parties that are unpopular, and I think that it makes sense that Scott Moe is doing that. I think it probably helps to solidify support with people who are already sympathetic to the Sask party. At the same time, we know that voters respond to economic issues, they respond to reality, and tend to blame incumbent governments for the realities they face, regardless of the kind of deeper policy questions around that. So I suspect that it holds people that are already sympathetic to the Sask party, but people who are really unhappy with the way things are going, either in healthcare or around cost of living, are still going to be fairly receptive to the NDP message that's being sent at the provincial level.
Daniel, a lot of people tune into these debates for the political theater of it, but in other cases it's to help make a decision. Maybe you're leaning towards the Sask party or to the NDP with your vote, and you were hoping tonight that you were going to get something that was going to push you one way or another. Do you think that the leaders helped push those undecideds one way or another?
I think in that case it's probably a wash. If you're looking to see if the NDP is centrist enough for you, perhaps an old previous Saska party voter looking and considering the NDP because of concerns with the way things are going now. I think the NDP probably did enough to pull some of those voters over. At the same time, if you're looking to see if the Sask party has enough investing in healthcare and investing in education, if you're a little bit more skeptical of the Sask party on those issues, the Sask party probably gave enough to hold those voters within the Sask party. So I look at this and I'm not sure, I mean, it's probably some voters this helped make a decision for, but I'm not sure that either party had an advantage of pulling more voters to their side. And I would be surprised if this moves the polls or moves voters from where they were prior to the debate.
Okay. Daniel, thanks so much for this. I want to bring back in our former MLAs who are on the panel with me here in Regina, just to get some thoughts first before I get into some of the questions I have for you. Your thoughts on what Carla had to say. Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, the source of revenue that is also in the provincial budget are federal transfers. There are federal transfers that come in one of the very specific areas, which is healthcare. So there is a definite concern within the province, and many finance ministers have traveled to Ottawa to determine what that transfer was going to be, because the feds have to pay and play a very important role in financing healthcare. So when you see a budget that's probably going to grow, I would suggest, as Treasury Board will prepare the next budget, it's going to be $8 billion. It'll be at least that. So $8 billion of taxpayers' money that comes from only one taxpayer, whether it's federal dollars or provincial dollars, we're all the same taxpayers. We're going to need over $8 billion to fund healthcare. That's huge in terms of where it was. Has it met all the challenges? Of course not. We know that we need to keep growing. We need to keep developing. And I think the Premier suggested that, the action center that's needed the urgent care center that's needed in Saskatoon, like the one here in Regina that has, I believe they're seeing over 120 people a day now that are not going to emergency rooms. Is that a new plan? Absolutely it is. So it's a record that we need to ensure we work with the feds, because the monies are going to come from the feds as well in healthcare.
Your thoughts on Carla and what she had to say there?
Well, I thought she did well. I mean, I think opportunities like that always highlight her strength, which is just speaking with people kind of more less on a less scripted basis. But I think she did a really good job of highlighting the fact that she's going to, when it comes to interacting with federal parties and federal leaders, she's going to advocate for Saskatchewan regardless of which leader's in power. And that's been very much in contrast to the Saskatchewan party. What we have seen over the past 17 years from the Sask party is that they align with and only with the federal Conservatives. They're only willing to pick a fight with federal Liberals. They're never willing to pick a fight with the federal Conservatives. We saw that flip-flop when Lauren Calvert was in government. They actually sued the federal government over equalization. They said the equalization formula wasn't fair to Saskatchewan. Brad Wall was very clear. Yes, we 100% agree. We sign on to this. As soon as the federal government changed and it was a Conservative government and Brad Wall was in power, they dropped the lawsuit. Now all of a sudden it's fair. And we see that time and time again is that the Saskatchewan Party premiers have not been willing to pick a fight with federal Conservatives, whether they're in power or not. They only pick a fight with Liberal prime ministers. So.
You think that's a fair assessment?
Well, now we're really highlighting some ancient things. You know, the equalization formula was developed decades and decades ago, and Jens is right. It's a terrible formula. And it does not, respond to Saskatchewan.
Are you two agreeing on something?
Absolutely we are, because we're speaking from the point of view of what's good for Saskatchewan. Yep. And the equalization formula is good for Quebec. I mean, when you look at the fact that of the equalization formula, we get nothing in Saskatchewan. Why? Well, because even a province like Manitoba, I believe they get $1.5 billion in equalization because they can produce electricity by a hydroelectric. Mm-hmm. Well, in Saskatchewan, we can't, but that's not in the formula. So we get penalized for the fact that we can't do that. So when you look at all of that stuff, and I know Carla highlighted debt, and I did talk a little bit about debt before, but I want to clarify for people who, because I think a debate brings about certain highlights, and Daniel mentioned this, but it's only 55 minutes, and the leaders have a very difficult time getting the entire platform talked about. But when you talk about debt, and I mentioned this, $10 billion worth of debt existed in this province on March 31st of 2007, before the Saskatchewan Party. Today, it is $31 billion. It's up $21 billion, but all of that debt is either Crown debt, business enterprise debt, or capital debt. And everybody, I think, including Carla, will talk about we need to build. We need to have more schools. We need to have more nursing homes. We need to have more hospitals. So you can't say you got to hold back your expenses over here. You can't have debt growing when you can't build. You got to build. I had a Sask Power employee meet me one time and say, you have to make sure that your government continues to fund infrastructure because we need to replace all of these power poles because my safety is in jeopardy. Okay, so constantly we want people to have cell phone service. We want towers. Towers are now between $1 and $2 million each. So will we have that kind of cash at SaskTel? I can assure you there isn't that kind of cash, so you have to borrow. But it's long-term borrowing that's going to be paid for by the users, us.
Yes, you opened your mouth and then I stopped you.
Well, I was just going to say I very much agree with Ken on that point. I mean, there's good debt and bad debt, and partly because of the history in this province, in this country, going way back to the 1980s, we got really turned off on government borrowing. But when you're borrowing for good purposes, and as long as that interest cost is affordable, government borrowing is really important. It helps you spread out the paying for something over the life of the life of what you're buying. So government debt and borrowing is important.
Okay, Ken, we have seen the Sask Party try to use the NDP's record against them. We saw Scott Moe saying it's the only record we have. It's the most recent one. When you consider the Sask Party has been in power for 17 years. How effective do you think he was in sharing his own platform versus dunking, as the cool kids would say, on the NDP's history?
Well, there's a wide spectrum of voters. There are people who have probably in that age group of 25 to 35 that have never known anything else but a Sask Party government. They don't know what occurred before. I can tell you that I used to, when I was on a teacher in the system in my first career, I used to bring students to the legislature and I'd ask the question, or they would come and see me later on in years afterwards when I was an MLA, and I would ask them, are you planning to stay or are you planning to leave after your grade 12? 18 out of 20, and again, I'm being evasive here in terms of the real percentage, but 18 out of 20 would say, no, we're not able to stay. because there's no jobs. So that's very important when you look at the growth of the province and what we need to do. We need to have a province that has a strong economy, because you can't build schools, you can't hire more teachers unless you have the money to do it. Or you're going to end up in a situation where you're going to have debt. But you're going to have bad debt, because it'll be a deficit. And it'll be huge deficits. It won't be the deficits that the NDP platform or the Saskatchewan Party are saying we're going to have for next year or the year after. These will be massive debts if we go back to the time when people and businesses leave, because the economy will become stagnant.
But is there anything showing you, or economists in general, that that's what's happening? Like that there's a potential for that to even happen?
No, I agree, and I listened to Carla mention that she believes that healthcare is on the verge of collapse. Well, I can tell you that in my area, we know a family member has been using the healthcare system, and I can tell you that the care that the person received in the Yorkton Hospital, transferred then by ambulance to the Priestville Hospital, and then unfortunately passed away in the Priestville Hospital, was outstanding. There's no crisis in healthcare in the Kenora Hospital, in the Priestville Hospital. Yes, there are a shortage of doctors sometimes, and we need to grow that, where we have a bigger team approach. I think it's more about a team approach, because there are medical doctors, there are staff that are going to say, no, it's time for my holidays. This was the long weekend. This was Thanksgiving. I'm gone for 5 days. Guess what? You now have services that are put on hold because there's no one there.
Jens, I'm wondering, is Carla doing a good job of distancing herself from that Lauren Calvert era, or does she even need to?
I couldn't say whether she's doing a good job or not. I don't know, but I think she doesn't need to. I mean, frankly, Lauren Calvert has a lot to be proud of. When he was premier, there was, I talked about this earlier, consecutive years of economic growth, consecutive years of increased government revenue, consecutive years of tax cuts. The province did very well under Lauren Calvert. He was an incredibly successful premier. Although I was one of those kids. I graduated high school in 1991, just coming off of the Grant Devine Conservative years, and when the province was on the verge of bankruptcy, and every person from my generation was not interested in staying in Saskatchewan.
Where did you go?
I ended up going, I stayed here for a couple of years, but then I went to Toronto for my university, and then I came back. And what I found here was an incredible province, as I knew it was. But there was a change. There had been a change under the NDP years from 91 to 97 when I came back. The mood had changed. Under the NDP, things were hopeful, things were growing, things were very good. So that was great. But I think Ken makes a good point that people are getting, the healthcare workers out there are doing a very good job with what they have to deliver care to people.
Absolutely.
That's not the issue, though. The issue is that from a system point of view, we aren't getting funded. When you've got 3 times the capacity in ER wards, and people are being shunted into hallways, when you hear that the people who have money are leaving the province to get their surgeries because they can afford it, that's when you end up with 2-tier healthcare, and that is not sustainable from a systemic point of view. It may be that the doctors, it isn't just maybe, it is that the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare workers are doing their best to deliver quality healthcare. But from a system point of view, which is what Scott Moe is responsible for, it's not being funded enough, and that's we're at a real crisis right now.
Okay.
Federal and provincial funding.
Right.
Remember that?
Yes, the connection there.
The connection, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you two in a moment, but first I want to go to the legislature, and that is where we'll find Adam Hunter and Murray Mandrick. Well, fresh off the debate set and the scrums, we are joined now by CBC Saskatchewan's Adam Hunter and Leader Post and Star Phoenix columnist Murray Mandrick. Gentlemen, a lively-ish night Adam, I'm wondering what things have been like behind the scenes. Were there handshakes? There were a lot of things we didn't get to see through the production.
Of course, yeah, I think Carla Beck and Scott Moe, despite what they may present to the viewers and the listeners, they are very collegial with one another. They're respectful, and so there was, some chit chat beforehand with the panelists, with Merelda Fiddler-Potter, the moderator, and with each other. So we had a few minutes before the debate show started to kind of chat and catch up. But once things got going, there was definitely a switch, Sam, as I think people would notice, and things turned up a few times during the debate. I think there's some highlights that you have been showing, and also that both parties have been posting online on social media, thinking that they had struck a blow with one issue or the other. And on set, it was definitely exciting to see, and also a really, I thought, a great job by Merelda to keep both of them on message and on time. And so really happy to be a part of it. And I thought, there were some wins and losses from both sides there during the debate.
Murray, you've been a part of a lot of debates, not to age you, but where does this one rank in your memory of debates between party leaders?
I don't think it was an outstanding debate, to be quite frank. I think that they both were exceedingly cautious in terms of their presentation. Neither one of them seemed to be taking a huge amount of chances. So there wasn't the fiery exchanges that I think you might want to see, but that's not what debates are about anymore. It's all about the clips afterwards. Asking us when we're watching the debate happen live is probably asking the worst people to do to analyze it, because we see what's happening live and we see what's happening. But where debates, I think, get judged are sort of the clips coming out later, for those that didn't see it, how that works in a campaign ad, how that sort of motivates and angers voters. I think that might be a bigger determinant than the actual debate itself. And so in terms of debates, it wasn't particularly fiery. I don't know if that's necessarily to the advantage of the opposition leader, because it seldom is. You want to have a reason for looking annoyed or unhappy about the Premier of the government on that stage, which I think Carla Beck did, and I think she made some points. I'm going to be very interested to see how those land in the coming days on social media, in ads, in other things around the water cooler. What did she say? I really didn't hear anything during the debate that I'd sit back and say, okay, that was really something memorable, and that's something that's going to land easy. But that can occur, and that often does occur in somewhat of a fabricated way, a manufactured way later on after the debate.
Adam, from a platform perspective, it's your job as a reporter to see through spin. How did Carla Beck and Scott Moe do in getting out their own personal platform details?
I think having covered the campaign and listened to almost every scrum and media availability from both the leaders, I think they were pretty effective in communicating what their platforms are, and also pointing out the shortfall or the shortcomings of the other person's platform. There were some back and forths about policing, I think, that where they definitely differ. There's also the stuff, and you heard in the scrums, about healthcare spending, education spending, and the overall budgeting of both platforms. You heard a couple of times while Scott Moe was speaking, Carla Beck say that's not true, that's a lie, that's not true. So she was trying to fill in the blanks there, and Scott Moe would come back. And so I thought they had a little bit of a good battle. We're used to watching them in the legislature during question period, and so the open debate forum I thought was a little bit more instructive as to how we're used to seeing them. They don't usually go head to head, and there's not a lot of yelling, and so that kind of played out similarly, I thought. But as to get back to your question, Sam, on the platforms, I thought they both hit all their talking points. There wasn't a thing sort of left out of there, and I thought probably even more importantly is they were trying to hit out where they thought the other person had a weakness in their platform, or something that they feel like is either not costed or something from their record, as you guys have been talking about on the panel.
Murray, the question I'm leaving with you, was there a clear winner here tonight?
Again, it's difficult to say in this moment from this position, because I think winners are often determined by the aftermath of debate rather than what we see live. I thought Carla Beck did not necessarily make a strong case as to why her platform was better and why what Scott Moe did and often presented in the legislature was ineffective. I thought there was plenty of opportunities for her to do so, and maybe she missed out on those opportunities. I don't know if Scott Moe, by the way, did terribly spectacularly. I think he was more relaxed and more focused on what he wanted to deliver, which is basically criticism of the NDP relations related to the federal government, numbers related to the balanced budgets, which were kind of silly because I don't think some of his numbers thrown out were accurate. I heard very little from Scott Moe about his actual programs and how they're going to make life better, which I thought was a bit of a weakness. But I thought Carla Beck needed to present herself, introduce herself to the public a little bit more effectively, and I thought she needed to more effectively give voters reason to vote for her. But once again, I can't stress this enough. You never judge debates by the night of the debate.
So you're telling me that there's not a winner?
No, I don't really think at this particular point there's a clear winner. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't necessarily think that Carla Beck accomplished quite as much as she hoped, or some hoped she would, and she had to probably do more in this debate than Scott Moe did. By the way, I don't ever think there's ever clearly a winner or a loser in most debates unless somebody horribly stumbles, and I don't think either one of them did that. But it was a tougher haul for Carla Beck because she had to introduce herself and introduce reasons to the public why she would be a better option than the current government. And I'm going to wait and see whether, as I say, some of the points she was trying to make do land.
Okay, well, you two gentlemen and I will get into this all over again on October 28th when we host the election. So we will leave that there. You guys can pack up and head home and just continue on the election campaign. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sam.
So if you are just joining us or you missed the debate, we're taking a look back at and analyzing the 2024 Saskatchewan provincial election leaders debate. I want to go back and just get some final thoughts from our panelists before we leave you tonight. So I'm going to go to Saskatoon in our CBC studios. That's where USask political studies professor Daniel Westlake has been. Final thoughts on this evening, Daniel.
Well, I think the debate and probably the campaign so far that I've seen matches what an American political scientist talks about as two people pulling on opposite directions with equal force, in that they're definitely hits that the parties have scored. They've definitely got their message out, but I don't think they've done enough to win more voters over from one side than the other. I think that probably leaves us in a situation where, unless the NDP can do something over these next 2 weeks, they probably pick up seats, but it's probably not enough for them to win government. And so this perhaps gives the NDP something they can talk about, but it also puts the Sask party in a reasonably comfortable position.
All right, Daniel, thanks so much for your analysis tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And back in Regina to my political panel of former MLAs who are showing like they're missing the Legislative Assembly a little bit tonight in the political theater. Ken, what are your final thoughts on tonight?
Well, I think it was pointed out by Marie and Adam. I think you can see from Scott being in the legislature, being there a while, and having had a leaders' debate before, it's experience. Experience, I believe, showed through the fact that he was able to convey the platform the way he wanted to and the way, all of the objectives. Carla, a new person, as I said, she did well in respect that it was a very civilized debate, and I think Jens has pointed that out. And that was what I wanted to see. I wanted to see ideas, I wanted to see platform, and I wanted to see those conveyed. I think what is not there, and I think Marie was looking for that big hot moment, the platforms were out already for almost a week. Mm-hmm. And what was presented today was the platforms. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it took anybody by surprise.
No surprises.
No surprises. It's been there. So in that respect, I think both leaders tried to do a discussion with their supporters or those that might come and support them. So I think it was a good debate in that respect.
Okay. And Jens, final word is to you.
Well, I shared with you earlier that I don't like watching debates that much, or at least not the more recent kind of formats of them. And the reason is I'm not really interested in the gamesmanship or the gotcha
drama
moment. I'm not interested in the political drama. I mean, the choice before us is about who's going to provide the best government for us over the next 4 years. Those are serious. There's serious decisions to be made. And what I liked about tonight's debate is that both leaders had a chance to present some different thoughts on that and give people a choice that wasn't super about personality or about who was the wittiest or that sort of thing. It was about what are these parties, what are these leaders actually going to do for us in government, and to me that's very important.
Okay, well, we will see how it all plays out when it comes to the election on October 28th. Voting week in Saskatchewan starts on October 22nd, and you can vote every day, I think, except for the Sunday before are the advance polls, and then, of course, it will all roll through to Election Day on October 28th. Before we leave you, I wanted to leave you with some highlights from tonight when it comes to what actually happened in the debate, because we've talked about it a lot. And let's take a quick look back at some of the moments from Carla Beck.
The province I grew up in was a place where people looked out for one another. On the farm, we relied on our neighbors, and our neighbors relied on us. This is a province where people can set aside differences to get things done. But Scott Moe and the Sask Party have taken us from leaders to laggards on issue after issue. Kids in grade 12 today have only known cuts and underfunding because of your underfunding of the education system. It's ridiculous. You cannot drive where we need to go if you keep looking in the rearview mirror, Mr. Moe.
Not only the capacity.
Simple solutions aren't going to work. You need to engage all of those parents, those communities, those who have lived a life of addictions to understand what's needed to turn this around. We are losing young people at a rate that has actually decreased our life expectancy in this province. This is not a simple one-size-fits-all solution. We need to keep people in this province alive so they can access care. We need to prevent them from getting...
Carla Beck became leader of the NDP in 2022, but she's been an elected member in Regina Lakeview since 2016. Now, Scott Moe became leader of the Saskatchewan Party in 2018, but he was first elected to the legislature in 2011 for his constituency of Rosser and Shellbrook. Now, this was not his first leaders' debate. He squared off with Ryan Miley in 2020, but here are some highlights from his exchange tonight with Carla Beck.
We are so fortunate in this province with the rural-urban synergy that we have. Many of our natural resources are located in rural areas of the province. Our ag land, our mining products, our oil and gas. The people that are bringing value to those natural resources, they often live in our villages, towns, and cities, in the urban parts of Saskatchewan. And here comes the synergy where those people add value to those products that are in the rural areas of our province. And so as we move forward and see the opportunities in mining investment, people living in rural communities that are working in the mining industry, ag value-added investment, people living in rural Saskatchewan that are adding value to our agri-food products. We are seeing successes like the export values, going from 17 billion under the NDP to 50 billion today. That's wealth in our communities. 17,000 jobs have been created just this past year. We have the highest rate of growth for private sector investment into any province across the nation of Canada. Inflation is at an all-time low due to us rejecting the Trudeau NDP carbon tax. That's why you've seen a government focus on recovery opportunities, building 500 intensive recovery beds, also adding 500 police officers, including RCMP officers, municipal officers, and yes, the Saskatchewan Marshal Service to keep your community safe wherever you live in this province.
Highlights from the 2024 provincial election leaders debate. That is it for us tonight. A big thank you to Ken Krawetz, Yens Pedersen, Daniel Westlake, Adam Hunter, Marie Mandrick for all their contributions tonight. For more on the provincial election campaign, you can head to cbc.ca/Sask, or you can subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. And don't forget to join us on election night, Monday, October 28th. We will be live across the province, bringing you results and analysis as the evening unfolds. Thanks so much for joining us for this special presentation of the CBC Saskatchewan News. Good night.